Hello everyone, my name is Olumide and I am your ERP consultant. So I'm going to do a short demo um, on egg collection process at Dainty Farms Limited. So this particular feature is extracted from the Poultry module. So and this is specifically designed based on client needs. So it's designed specifically for Dainty Farms Limited. So I want you to relax and let's take it through. Before we start, I would also like to mention that this system is also designed based on control. So there are some things that are actually very important to achieve before you can move on with it. So the first thing is you are making egg collection, you are recording your egg collection. At this point, you are trying to set aside the settable eggs and also the non-settable eggs. Settable eggs are recognized to be the healthy eggs that are planned for incubation, while the non-settable are the ones that are not fit to go through incubation process. So settable eggs for Dainty Farms Limited is being transferred to the hatchery department so it can be incubated, while that of non-settable is being sent to the sales for selling it out to customers. So first we are going to be using the application called ERPNext. So, and I explained something that one of the things I love this application for is the ability to make some kinds of customization. And I also want to let you know that if this, even if the system is an open source, you cannot do everything because there are some controls that are in place and by standard it has to be followed. So this particular feature or function that is being created for egg collections is a standalone, which is then being integrated into the stock entry module of ERPNext. It means that you can do whatever you want to do within this egg collection, but the end result is you want it to update your stock. Now, at the point of before it can update your stock, it means that there are some things that are actually important, which is the location is important, the item or the batch that is going to be used is also very important. So which means you must have the item created, you must have the batch created, you understand. Then the location, which is the warehouse, are supposed to be created as well. So all these functions have been created prior to this training. So then I'd use this hard PML egg record. So this gives me details or information that needs to be filled on this form. Before we can say we want to have a egg record, we must have what we call the batch forecast. Yes, this is a projection or this is an estimate that is given to a particular batch. So there is a plan that this particular batch will be able to give me this kind of egg production, this quantity of eggs within a particular time frame. You understand? And all that also must be considered. So it means that before we go into this egg record, we have to look at the batch forecast so that we can actually see how the system functions around this, because it's going to use that to determine the cost. It's going to use to determine the egg cost, or that's the egg production cost for the settable eggs. Yeah, it might be straightforward for the non-settable, but for the settable eggs, it needs the batch forecast template. Now, this template is actually gotten from Dainty Farms Limited. Like I said earlier, it is specifically designed for Dainty Farms Limited. It was a rigorous process to achieve this, but at the end of the day, we were able to achieve. So let me do something here. So what I would do is, it is important for you to set the date and all that. But before we go there, let's look for the batch forecast. So I'm going to go into that particular function or that particular feature within the ERPNext. So I can look for forecasts, which is the forecast. Yeah, so this is the forecast. So, and this is expected to project. Now, before you can project, there will be a period. So it means that there must be a setup for the periods. So you have periods, you can have yearly periods, you can have quarterly period, you can have monthly period, depending on whatever period you want. So for instance, if I'm setting up, I'm just trying to show you the kind of setup that was done around this. So let's assume this is the period. So I can set up, I will just use this for instance, 2025 is the name. Then the period starts from this and it ends with this. So I can decide to say quarter one. For instance, I can just decide to say quarter one. So I can just say Q1, then just say January to March. So say ending of March. This is just quarter one, just giving an example so you understand. So this is just period, and what this period would do is this. Now at the point whereby I select, let me say I'm trying to create this, for instance, if I try to create a batch forecast and I say, the system would ask me for what period. If I say quarter one, you can see by default, because we have set that up already, it's going to tell us where it's starting from and where it's ending. Then you also need to specify the batch you are working with, which means that this forecast or this plan that you are trying to create, you are creating it in relation to a particular batch. So now these are the batches that are here within the system. So the batches here are the biological assets that has been created. So those are the ones that will be filtered within the system. So I can pick, let me say I just pick, I don't pick that, let's say I pick this for instance. So by default, we have created this batch, so there is a place for us to create batch as well. Let me just go back into that also. So creating your batch setup, there must be a batch setup as well. It's still the same functions relating to batch that ERPNext provided, but we just made some kinds of customization to fit it better. So if you look at these, a lot of custom fields have been added here. But for this batch, it is also important that if it is a female, which is the hen, so we only decided to just use female as the gender and all that. So we use gender. Then expected egg production day. So if it is a male, we don't expect production. We don't expect egg production. So, but if it is female, it is important that you indicate expected egg production date. So let's say this, let's say what's the date of birth, just giving an example. The date of birth here, look at the date of birth here is 2024. Let's say egg production should start, just assuming, should start in 2025, let's say in May, just picking any date at random. So I pick this. Now I save this. You understand? So if I go back, this is where your batch setup. So all this must have been set up. You understand? So then what else? Remember what we are doing here is what? The batch forecast. So the batch forecast must happen first before you do your egg production. Now, what do we do? After selecting a period, which means the period is Q1. I can give it any name. I can say Q1 for 2026 and all that. So I'm just using this as an example. So I do this. Let me select that batch again, so that let me select the batch again. I select the batch again, so it's giving me here because it was expected to display this. So this is it. Then valuation. So as at this date, what is the batch valuation? That is, what is the cost? What is the cost of that batch in total? So I expect at this point that you must have known your cost of purchase and also the developmental cost that must have gone into it before egg production begins, so, or before this date begins. So I'll just use this as an example. Let me say this is 150. Now if you notice that at the point where I pick this, also it's drop the batch quantity. Yeah, that's the quantity as at now that is on that batch. It's going to drop that, but since this is a forecast, this is not going to update any what's it called? It's not going to update your inventory or anything, but it will only pop out this telling you that this is what you have in quantity, that is how many birds or how many flock are in that particular batch. So that's what it means here. So I can decide if by counting it's more than this or it's less than this. You can edit it. So this does not mean anything at this point, but which means in your home projection it is important, because whatever thing you are doing here, there are a lot of meaning to it. So it is important for you to have the correct value on that. So let's say I'm just putting this. Then now another thing that is important for your batch forecast is this. Now there are some production target which is also important. So there is a different document. I'm going to close this, for instance. So there is a production target document and there is a feed chart that is that a kind of percentage applies to the age of the birds or the batch. When it gets to a certain age, they are supposed to produce a certain numbers or a certain quantity of eggs. So that also must be defined. Now also here, look at this as well. Based on that particular age as well, their feed consumption must be based on this. So for you, the system to be able to get all that value, it means that there must be a template it has to look at, or there must be a chart it has to look at. So I'm going to use let's just say I pick this. This have been set up already, but I'm going to pick them so that now look at this. I will just open this. This is the production target. That is, this is a target for these birds. Now if I go, I've opened this particular document just to show you. Look at what is happening here. Now it is also important that you create a production target. You create a production target for each of your batch. So this are the batch. So this particular batch is here. And also note something. Sorry, another thing I want you to take note is this. So depending on the batch that is being selected here, so it's going to filter based on the batch you are selecting here as well, which means that if I create a batch, for instance this breeder 21, if I'm creating a forecast for, like, let's say breeder 22, if I don't have a production target that have been set up for breeder 22, it's not going to drop down there for me. That's what it means. So let me give you another example. Let's say let me clear this. I'm going to pick let's say this. Now if I come here and say this, you can see there is no production target for this batch. Also for the chart, there is no feed chart for this batch. So it is important that every batch must have its chart, because that is what you are going to be using to compute your forecast. It is important that they have their chart set up. So I'm going to change this again back to the way it was, to 21. Yeah. So what I will have here, drop this, just this is just the only one created. So you might have different ones, so you can create multiple ones and pick the one that is actually specific for this particular forecast. So let me just give you a run through of what this production target is. Now look at this production target. Like I said, this was based on the template that was submitted or that was explained by Dainty Farms Limited. So now if you look at this now, you will see that the only thing that will even drop down here are the batch that are marked as female. So you can set age lower limit, age upper limit, then give a percentage to it. That is that it means that for this batch, and this batch falling on this date age, if it falls within this age 23.1 to 24, which is 23 weeks and a day to 24 weeks. Yes, that's how the age is being computed here. So the age is week and days. So that's why you see 20.1. That's 20 weeks, then 1 day. So that's what this means. So if a bird falls within this age bracket, they expected that the production target is 3%. If it falls above these 25%, like that, you understand? So it goes like that. But there is a particular place. Okay, there is a kind of special efficiency also that would also be used to multiply that. But when it gets to this level, it changes like that. You understand? So, and that's for the production chart. Now, for the feed, the same thing too applies for the feed as well. That is, you want to know the kind of consumption and the feed type. So any age that is between 0 to let's say 0 to 1 will consume, that is per bed. So this is per quantity, so not per batch. So if you have 20 beds in a batch, it means that it's 20 multiplied by this. That is what the consumption would be within this age bracket. So within this age bracket like that, and this is the type of feed they will take. We have starter, we have grower, we have all these. Now these things are designed here so that when you are setting up your forecast, it just looks at whatever thing that so it looks at, let me close this, so it will look at this feed chart that you have selected here to populate its data. It's used this also to populate its data. So let me do something. I'll just click on generate now. So now clicking on generate, so what will the system do? It means that it will look at first the date, that is the period start date to the period end date. So it's going to populate all this. Look at this. I'm going to populate all this based on that. So this is the date you are going to see here is January 2026, January 1, 2026 till March 31st, 2026. So if you this another page, let's go down. So I think that's the last one. So that's what I'm going to look at here. Now, if you look at each of these, I'm going to explain the details here to you. Look at this now. Look at this. So at this date, the age of the bird is what? 60 weeks. At this date, remember the batch date of birds is this. So at this, so it's 60 weeks at this end. Now, the quantity, which is this quantity that is here, is being brought here as well. This is the quantity as at that point in time. Then there is a kind of how will I call it, a certain percentage for mortality. It was considered that it's 2% is considered for mortality. That is within a certain period, they expected that it is likely to have a 2% reduction in it. Now look at this as well. The estimated egg production. Estimated egg production. How will the system know that this is 3518? So it is based on whatever that is here. That is the percentage that 60 weeks falls under. So let's look at something. If I do this, so I have, so let's see, 60 weeks. So so this is it, this 78%, right? This is 78%. So if I do, let's just try this. Let's try this. This is 78%, I think. 78%. So that's a 78% of this 4606 will give us these, then multiplied by, they're multiplied by this. Zero 0.9790. That should give us this. So we have 3518 as the estimate. So this is what we are going to have at this point. So that is what is telling us that estimated egg production for this batch in this quantity will give us this. You understand? So if you look at it again, now I think based on the template as well, every Sunday and every Wednesday there's always a kind of hex set that is being done. So this, if you compute, if you had this, if you sum this up, it will give you this. So the same thing too. So this should be, I think this should be Sunday. So all hex collected with those period would have a hex set here like this. So the same thing to Wednesday, like that, would have all that set up here. You understand? So so that is that, I think. Yeah. So now I think another thing is every 4 weeks, there is a reduction. That is every month there is a reduction of 2%. So that is why when it gets to 64, week 64, that is when the bird is 64 age, you can see that there's a reduction in the quantity. So that is what it means here as well. So, and that moves on like that. In the next this 64, so if we go to maybe 68, this will be the same thing until you get to 68. I think 68, you will see that there's another reduction here on that, so to 2% like that. So that is that about that. So let me show you another thing that might be important as well. Let's see. So the system will also show you, we compute the estimated feed for you based on whatever that was selected here. We show you that here. So if I scroll down to see then the batch, the total batch feeds, which is whatever that is here multiplied by the quantity, should give us this. Then what type of feed type that is required, it will also show us there. Then the amortization per egg will also be computed here. So this amortization and this amortization per production, this is showing negative because this our value is not realistic. Yes, it is not realistic. That is why that is showing us that. So dainty computation on amortization per egg, also there's a computation on that as well. So, and that is the computation that was gotten here. So if this is multiplied by this, if this is multiplied by this, we should have this. So that is amortization per production. You understand? So that is that about that. What else do we need to understand here? So this is the aspect of the forecast. So, and I just try to explain that. I don't want this first video to be too long. Okay, let's move on there. Yeah, look at this as well. So after this, you would see that there is another column here called summary. So this will show us the summary. This will show the summary of, remember, it is, we did it in March, so that is why April, May are not showing, but till March is going to give you value. It is the total feed cost, the total feed consumption, and this is the total egg production for this month. Feed consumption, then egg production per month. That's what is being displayed at this level. So this is just to show the total egg production for the period chosen. Then also cost adjustment per bird. Okay, I think based on the template we saw a kind of standard cost of 5,000, so that was why this was included there. That is also an element for computing the amortization as well. Then also oldest age as at this period. What is the oldest age as at this period here? Let's see, last is 72.5. Now this is the quantity as at that time. So this is just to give us a summary of the forecast that is being done. You understand? So that's all regarding forecast. So you might want to watch the next video for the egg production process. So thank you and join me in the next video. Bye.